We shall now proceed with the conferring of degrees and awarding of diplomas. Some degrees will be conferred in absentia. The dean of each college will ask the candidates from the college to stand and will present the candidates to the president. Candidates will remain standing until asked to be seated by the dean. The candidates for the certificate in technical agriculture will be presented by Vice President Christensen.
Will the candidates for certificates in technical agriculture please stand? Mr. President, these candidates have been recommended by the college faculty and the general faculty and approved by the State Board of Regents for certificates indicating the satisfactory completion of their studies.
In recognition of satisfactory attainments in the prescribed courses, you will receive a certificate showing the completing of the 2-year program in technical agriculture in the College of Agriculture.
Will the graduates please be seated?
The candidates for the degree Bachelor of Science from the College of Agriculture will be presented by Dean Coleman.
Will the candidates for the bachelor's degree in the College of Agriculture please stand? Dr. Parks, these candidates have completed their prescribed curricula and have been recommended by the agricultural faculty, the general faculty, and the State Board of Regents for the degree Bachelor of Science in Agriculture.
In recognition of the satisfactory completion of your studies in the College of Agriculture, by the authority delegated to me by the Commonwealth of Iowa, I confer upon you the degree Bachelor of Science. The diploma which you will receive will forever be the testimony of this academic achievement.
Will the graduates please be seated?
The candidates for the bachelor's degrees from the College of Education will be presented by Dean Lagomarsino.
The candidates for the degree Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science in the College of Education will please stand. Mr. President, these candidates have successfully completed the prescribed curricula in the College of Education. They have been recommended by the college and general faculty and approved by the Board of Regents for the bachelor's degree.
In recognition of the satisfactory completion of your studies in the College of Education, by the authority delegated to me by the Commonwealth of Iowa, I confer upon you the degree Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. The diploma which you will receive will forever be the testimony of this high academic achievement.
The graduates will please be seated.
The candidates for the bachelor's degrees from the College of Engineering will be presented by Dean Boylan.
Will the candidates for the degree Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science in the College of Engineering please rise? Mr. President, these candidates have satisfactorily completed the prescribed curriculum in the College of Engineering, have been recommended by the college faculty and the general faculty and approved by the State Board of Regents for the degree Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science.
In recognition of the satisfactory completion of your studies in the College of Engineering, by the authority delegated to me by the Commonwealth of Iowa, I confer upon you the degree Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. The diploma which you will receive will forever be the testimony of this academic achievement.
Congratulations. Will you please be seated?
The The candidates for the bachelor's degrees from the College of Home Economics will be presented by Dean Deacon.
Will the candidates for the Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science degrees in the College of Home Economics please stand? Mr. President, these candidates have completed their various program requirements in the College of Home Economics. They've been recommended by the college and by the general faculties and have been approved by the Board of Regents for the degree Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts.
In recognition of the satisfactory completion of your studies in the College of Home Economics, by the authority delegated to me by the Commonwealth of Iowa, I confer upon you the degree Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. The diploma which you will receive will forever be the testimony of this academic achievement.
You may be seated.
The candidates for the bachelor's degrees from the College of Sciences and Humanities will be presented by Dean Russell.
Candidates for baccalaureate degrees in the College of Sciences and Humanities will please stand. President Parks, these candidates have satisfactorily completed the requirements for the baccalaureate degree in the College of Sciences and Humanities. They have been recommended by the college and general faculties and approved by the State Board of Regents for the baccalaureate degree.
In recognition of the satisfactory completion of your studies in the College of Sciences and Humanities, by the authority delegated to me by the Commonwealth of Iowa, I confer upon you the degree Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Music. The diploma which you will receive will forever be the testimony of this academic achievement.
Will the new graduates please be seated?
The candidates for the bachelor degree from the College of Veterinary Medicine will be presented by Dean Pearson.
Will candidates for the degree Doctor of Veterinary Medicine please stand? Mr. President, these candidates have satisfactorily completed the requirements for the degree Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. They have been recommended by the college and by the general faculties and approved by the State Board of Regents.
In recognition of your satisfactory completion of the curriculum in veterinary medicine, by the authority delegated to me by the Commonwealth of Iowa, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, of which the diploma you will receive will forever be the testimony.
Doctors, please be seated.
The candidates for the master's degrees from the Graduate College will be presented by Dean Zafrano.
The candidates for master's degrees, please rise. Dr. Parks, these candidates have completed the requirements prescribed for their respective degrees. They are recommended by the graduate and general faculties and are approved by the State Board of Regents for the master's degree.
In recognition of the satisfactory completion of your respective programs in the Graduate College, of your superior ability and your scholarly interests, by the authority delegated to me by the Commonwealth of Iowa, I confer upon you the master's degree with its accompanying rights, privileges, and obligations. The diploma which you will receive will forever be the testimony of this academic achievement.
Masters, please be seated.
The candidates for the degree Doctor of Philosophy from the Graduate College will be presented by Dean Safrano.
Candidates for the degree Doctor of Philosophy, please rise. Dr. Parks, these candidates have completed all prescribed courses, have demonstrated their ability in research, have shown marked proficiency in their chosen fields, and have satisfactorily passed all examinations. They are recommended by the graduate and general faculties and are approved by the State Board of Regents for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
In recognition of the satisfactory completion of your respective programs in the Graduate College, of your accomplishments in research, of your scholarly tastes, by the authority delegated to me by the Commonwealth of Iowa, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy with its accompanying rights, privileges, and obligations. The diploma now to be placed in your hands, the hood with which you will be invested, shall forever be testimony of your academic rank.
Marvin Sidney Beck from Metallurgy, presented by Dr. Wexler.
Graduating class, your parents, other relatives, faculty, and friends. I want to welcome all of you to this happy occasion, and I want to extend my particular congratulations to those of you who are graduating today. At this point in the program, it is my pleasant responsibility to introduce our speaker of the morning, and this I will proceed to do. Our speaker this morning, as you know, is Nathan K. Nick Kotz. Mr. Kotz was born in San Antonio, Texas, I'm sorry. Not sorry you were born there, Nick, just sorry I mispronounced it. It's San Antonio, Texas. He went north for his education. He took his bachelor's degree at Dartmouth College in international relations with high honors, Phi Beta Kappa, and that sort of thing. He did graduate study in international relations at the London School of Economics from 1955 to 1956, did some military service in the U.S. Marine Corps as first lieutenant from 1956 to 58. He has had a distinguished professional career which continues. He was on the staff of the Des Moines Register from 1958 to 1964, and undoubtedly some of you remember his articles from that time. He did miscellaneous reporting, as all young reporters do, I suppose, covering police, city, county, state government, and special projects and investigative reporting. He was a Washington correspondent from 1964 to 1970 for both the Des Moines Register and the Minneapolis Tribune, specializing in politics, investigative reporting, and social issues. He was on the staff of the Washington Post from 1970 to 73, where he was national correspondent, specializing in investigating, reporting, and social issues. In 1973, he decided to sever those connections and to become a freelance writer, writing for magazines and authoring of books. He has been an occasional lecturer at several universities, including American University, George Washington, Princeton, Harvard, Illinois, Iowa State University, Drake, Memphis State, University of Iowa, and West Virginia University. In 1978, at the present that is, he also is adjunct professor at the American University in the School of Communication. Now, I will not try to list all of Mr. Kotz's publications, but I will mention some of the more important and recent ones. He is author of a book entitled Let Them Eat Promises, The Politics of Hunger in America, published by Prentice Hall in 1970. He is co-author of a book called The Unions, published in 1972. And he is also co-author of a book entitled A Passion for Equality, George Wiley and the Movement. I might mention that his co-author in this case is his wife, Mary Lynn Kotz, a distinguished author in her own right. He has written for magazines, including, and still does, magazines including Harper's, Look, the New York Times, The Nation, The New Republic, The Washington Monthly. He has received numerous professional honors, and I will mention a few of those. The Iowa Associated Press Writing Awards in 1961, 62, 63, and 64. The Chautauqua Society Award in 1963 for his series on racial discrimination. The Raymond Clapper Memorial Award in 1966. The Sigma Delta Chi Award for Washington Correspondence in 1966. The Pulitzer Prize for National Reporting in 1968. The Raymond Clapper Memorial Award in 1968 and again in 1974. And the first Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Award in 1969. It is now my genuine pleasure to introduce to you the distinguished author and journalist, Mr. Nathan Nick Kotz, who will speak on the subject, A Passion for Equality. Welcome home, Nick.
President Parks, members of the class of 1978, and friends of Iowa State University. It is a pleasure to be with you today and to be back in Iowa. During the years that I worked for the Des Moines Register and that we lived here, Mary Lynn and I, in effect, became adopted Iowans. And even though we moved to Washington and became afflicted with an insidious disease known as Potomac fever, we still look on Iowa as our second home, a place where we have strong roots and strong friendships that inspire us with the values of Iowans. Science fiction movies are very much in vogue these days. We've had Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Hollywood has more pictures of this kind in the making. The movie and book writing business are getting so lucrative that even reporters like me are trying to capitalize on the current fads. And I'd like to try my hand with you. It's a movie scenario which I will choose to call Cyclone Wars, Close Encounters of a Fourth Kind. The plot begins late in the 21st century with a visitor from outer space landing on this campus near the remains of a still unnamed football stadium. There are no signs of life on the campus. In fact, there are no signs of life in the surrounding countryside as well. The explorer from outer space begins to try to puzzle what has happened at this place, why the people are gone. Finally, he finds a time capsule in the wall of a building. Opening it, the strangers from outer space are puzzled by the contents. There is a bumper sticker urging the re-election of Bob Ray to a 15th term as governor of Iowa. There's a can of Billy Beer, 16 books about a strange phenomenon called jogging, a collection of Don Call's columns over the coffee, a very weighty volume called The Bomb, and a cartoon strip by Gary Trudeau describing laid-back students at a place called Mello University. The visitors from outer space look through this material and are puzzled by it, and they grimace at the taste of Billy Beer. And they are about to give up trying to solve the puzzle when they find a manuscript written by an Iowa State professor of agricultural economics. It is a serious statement from the professor in which he predicts the downfall of the United States. He says that the end will come late in the 21st century, and that the nation will be destroyed by two opposing forces. One force that loved its institutions fiercely, another force that hated them angrily. The institution lovers, he tells us, rigidly refuse to make any changes in their way of running government, business, universities, etc. The institution haters, on the other hand, insisted that all the old institutions were hopelessly bad and must be destroyed and replaced. Between them, the professor told us, they will destroy the country. Since economics professors, even those from Iowa State, have been known to be wrong occasionally, I would like to talk with you today about another possible outcome, one with perhaps a happier ending, a course in which our institutions will be cherished but will also change, a course in which we will continue to pursue the difficult job of fulfilling the highest values of our society: liberty and equality. It has been almost 10 years since I last spoke on this campus at Stevens Auditorium. The occasion of that meeting was a welling up of concern in Iowa and around the nation about the subject of hunger and malnutrition. We were talking about human suffering, not in India, not in the Sahel, but in the United States, in rural Mississippi, in urban Harlem, and right here in Iowa, the nation's breadbasket. That meeting here in Ames came near the end of an era of concern about discrimination and human suffering, about the issues of civil rights and of poverty. It was an era of activism. The decade of the 60s was a period in which students and teachers, ministers and parishioners, parents and children, businessmen and lawyers all became activist citizens, first in the cause of civil rights and poverty, then in the cause of ending a disastrous war. Today, that era has not only ended, but it recedes in our memories. Today's graduating students were but 6 years old when Bull Connor unleashed his police dogs on the civil rights demonstrators in Birmingham. Today's graduates were only 12 at the time of the student massacre at Kent State. The 60s were a period in which masses of citizens exercised their rights of citizenship beyond a mere biennial trip to the ballot box. We became fully engaged as a people. Our actions were on such a scale that they were called movements. There was the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement and the welfare rights movement, to name just three. Hundreds of thousands marched in Washington, D.C. and responded to Martin Luther King's evocation of a dream for a just America, and to President Johnson's call for a great society, a society in which discrimination and poverty would have no place. Those movements touched Iowa as well, and touched it deeply. The Iowa State Legislature passed a fair employment law after first overcoming the resistance of a powerful state senator who said that black people were not ready for equality. And the Northwestern Bell Telephone Company finally hired its first black as a telephone installer, after first refusing on grounds that white women in Iowa would not permit a black man to enter their homes to install a telephone. That was a very few years ago. Since then, we have come a long way. We have made progress in overcoming racial discrimination and in easing the grinding poverty of some Americans. But the generation of the 60s left a lot of unfinished business. Today, I would like to challenge you, the generation of the 70s, to enter society with a commitment not only to finish that business, but to serve your fellow human beings on this planet. The problems of social and economic injustice in America remain severe. And the most troubling dilemma is that much of the nation today seems to have lost of the poor and of minorities. The 70s has more often than not been a period of neglect, benign or otherwise. We have most often satisfied ourselves in recent years with Anatole France's ironic definition of equality. The law in its majestic equality, said Anatole France, forbids the rich as well as the poor to sleep under bridges and to beg in the streets. Why is it that after a period of great social change, we are going now through a period of reaction? Is it because all the problems were solved? Is it because every period of change is followed by a period of consolidation or reaction? Is it because the programs of the 60s were not effective and did not work? Indeed, there is some truth in each of these explanations. The problems were ameliorated, and great breakthroughs were made in civil rights. It is true that this nation does not for long countenance radical change. Great bursts of change in the 1930s and again in the 60s were followed by periods of conservation of existing institutions. Some of the programs of the 60s did not work as well as they might have, but others achieved profound results. I think we must look, however, at more basic causes for the present stalemate on issues of race, poverty, and justice in America. To begin with, we Americans tend to tackle deep-seated social issues with a marvelous naive optimism and a lack of understanding of the extreme difficulty of achieving meaningful change. In his book about America, Alexis de Tocqueville wrote as follows: "Americans have a lively faith in the perfectibility of man. They all consider society as a body in a state of constant improvement, and humanity as a changing scene in which nothing is or ought to be permanent. and they admit what appears to them today to be good may be superseded by something better tomorrow. Those qualities described by de Tocqueville, particularly that of optimism, serve us well and distinguish us from the cynicism of older societies. But we also underestimate the difficulties of the task. We tend to regard proclamations and laws and political rhetoric as self-fulfilling prophecies, requiring no further effort on our part. Thus, a President Johnson could declare a war on poverty and make it sound as if the passage of a few laws or the appropriation of a relatively small amount of money could bring victory. Second, we tend to substitute the symbolism of change for its reality. Thus, a President Ford could pop his own English muffin in the toaster and declare war on inflation by asking everyone to wear win buttons. But the President never committed himself nor the country to the hard realities of dealing with inflation and unemployment. Thus, a President Carter has carried his own suit bag, walked in his inaugural parade, spent the night in our homes, and worn cardigan sweaters for fireside chats. But these symbols have been no substitute for his inability to deal effectively with the realities of power in Washington and the country. Franklin Roosevelt, another president, also made fireside chats, but they were in connection with declaring a national bank holiday, taking America off the gold standard, creating a social security system, and leading a united country to war. Roosevelt used symbols effectively, but he also took controversial actions to bring about fundamental changes for improvement in the society. A third problem related to the others is our trendiness in social concerns. We are as trendy about these concerns as we are in moving from one dance fad to another, or from hula hoops to skateboards. We rush from issue to issue, from one frantic hype to the next. We rush from the issue of race to that of poverty, to the environment, to consumerism, to energy, as if each of these problems could be solved with a few quick brushstrokes of rhetoric and public law. Politicians in this country are notoriously fickle in rushing from issue to issue, leaving the unsolved ones behind. And the American news media are incredibly gullible in jumping from one subject to another, swayed by the latest hype. As one Washington correspondent told her editors recently, "You better hire a water reporter because water is going to be the next hot issue." The fact is that all of these problems are difficult, and that solution of them requires people dedicating themselves to continuous action over a lifetime, or even over many lifetimes. In a conversation recently with a friend, I reminisced about our coverage of the plight of migrant workers in Florida in the late 1960s. "Oh, that's been taken care of," he said happily, recalling that the Coca-Cola Company had built some new housing for its Minute Maid migrant workers after horrible conditions were exposed where they lived. Several days after this conversation, unfortunately, I read in the Miami Herald that the conditions indeed had not changed since we were there before. And this is a peculiar, ironic case of journalism, because it was in Immokalee, Florida, in 1960 that Edward R. Murrow produced television's most distinguished documentary, Harvest of Shame. It was in Immokalee, Florida, a few years later, that two reporters won the Pulitzer Prize, exposing the same conditions. It was in Immokalee, Florida, in 1970 that NBC returned with a great documentary showing that nothing had changed since Murrow was there 10 years earlier. It was in Immokalee, Florida, that I went a few years ago and that reporters from the Miami Herald went last week to tell us again nothing had changed. Immokalee, Florida is but one example. I could easily substitute for it the repeated investigations, exposés, but little change conditions in such Iowa black ghettos as Pleasant Valley in Fort Dodge. And these examples bring me to another point about social and economic change. Are we really willing to confront honestly the depth of change required of American institutions if this is to be a more just society? Because the underpaid, exploited, ill-housed, and uneducated migrant in Immokalee, Florida, in fact serves a very useful purpose in the American agricultural system. Changing that farm worker's lot for the better would mean fundamentally changing the system. And there would be ill effects for others of us. Some people would be put out of business. Others would have higher costs. Consumers would have higher prices. The hard question is, do we as Americans want to pay the price and force the kind of change required to eliminate harvests of shame in America? In a similar vein, are American institutions willing to undertake the change necessary to make blacks and other minorities full participants in all parts of our economic system? Blatant discrimination is now against the law. Middle-class blacks have made much progress. Token blacks have been hired virtually everywhere. But in whole sections of our economy, banking, insurance, accounting, journalism, university teaching, blacks have made less than a bare toehold. The question is this: are these institutions willing to make room for black people and other minorities, or are we only willing to offer them so-called equal opportunity? Equal, that is, if anyone who starts 200 yards behind in a race can be told, okay, everything's now equal for the rest of the race. And that brings me to a final question. How much equality in actual fact are we prepared to give to the underprivileged in American society? How much economic injustice are you and me willing to eliminate from this society? There is no serious movement in this country for a socialistic type leveling in which everyone would be reduced to the same income. Socialism is not the issue. The issue is whether we are interested in making the fundamental changes which would even somewhat lessen the economic disparity between the top and the bottom of American society. Are we satisfied to have a country in which 23 million people live in poverty and another 30 million are constantly on poverty's ragged edge? Is it equitable in American life that a tiny minority of Americans, barely more than 1/20th of 1%, has a fifth of all corporate stock, 2/3 of all state and local bonds, 2/5 of all bonds and notes, while the bottom 50% of Americans combined have only 3% of this country's wealth? The richest 1% own more than half of all corporate stock. The top 1/5 of Americans get 40% of all income, and the bottom fifth get 5%, a spread of 8-to-1. And despite all the redistributive efforts, despite all the wars on poverty, the distribution of wealth at the top and the bottom of this society has not changed in 50 years. Perhaps we as a people are satisfied with that division of wealth. Perhaps it is enough to believe that anyone has the opportunity to rise from the bottom to the top or to tumble from the top to the bottom. But I would pose this to you. If it is unsatisfactory to have so many people suffering poverty at the bottom, then we must face the facts of fundamental change. And these are some of them. There are not now, and there never have been, except during brief periods of wartime, enough jobs paying family-supporting wages for everyone able and willing to work in this country. Today, millions are unemployed. Millions more work full-time at poverty wages. These would be some of the costs of fundamental change for greater economic and social justice. Raising the minimum wage to a livable level, creating enough jobs for those who want to work, providing a guaranteed minimum decent income for those who can't work, mainly the elderly and children. Those are the kind of fundamental changes which we must be willing to look at if we are willing to do more than make speeches and pass hollow laws. And there would be costs. The costs would be inflation, higher taxes, and a necessary closing of some present tax advantages for the very rich. We may not want to make these changes, but let us not kid ourselves with empty political rhetoric. It is true, as President Carter said, that life is unfair. It is true that we have little control over much of that unfairness, over who will die young in an accident, over who is blessed with good health rather than with bad. But we do have the ability in this democracy to moderate that unfairness if we have the heart and if we have the will. The most basic values of our democracy are those of equality and of liberty. These two ideals sometimes conflict, and a healthy democracy must maintain them in harmony. Unchecked liberty, permitting one man to trample his neighbor, seriously interferes with equality. And the enforcement of a total leveling equality would eliminate a great deal of our personal liberty. Liberty is a precious gift, and we must treasure and preserve it and never take it for granted. We must protect our personal liberty against the mindless encroachment of giant institutions, whether government, business, or labor. But liberty, I would suggest, has a hollow and decadent ring if its only concern is self-gratification. It is this endless self-gratification that has led some of our critics to call you and me the me generation. Conservatives and liberals, Democrats and Republicans have honest differences over how to deal with these issues of social and economic justice. Indeed, we have honest differences over what should be the shape of an ideal society. That is as it should be, but central to our society is a common concern and compassion for our fellow men. That concern is a central test of any humane and great society. The question is how to strike an equitable balance between the values of liberty and equality. There is no easy answer, but a good beginning is to face the issues honestly and squarely. That is the challenge facing you, a new generation of Americans, a new generation who can take up the unfinished agenda of the 1960s and try to move it forward in the years ahead. I would suggest to you that there is a danger to mellowness. There is a danger to being a laid-back generation, to not voting, to responding only to the latest trendy hype. The late educator Robert Maynard Hutchins described the dangers this way. The death of democracy, he said, is not likely to be an assassination from ambush. It will be a slow extinction from apathy, indifference, and undernourishment. His thoughts were not new ones. Several thousand years earlier, Aristotle put it this way: if liberty and equality are to be chiefly found in democracy, they will be best attained when all persons alike share in the government to the utmost. I hope that many of you will accept the challenge and responsibility to participate fully and idealistically in American public life, and to participate even knowing that making change is difficult and achieving the ideal is impossible. As de Tocqueville wrote of America, democratic institutions awaken and flatter the passion for equality without ever being able to satisfy it entirely. The measure of justice in American society in the years ahead depends on the extent to which that passion for equality burns in each of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koch, for that very worthwhile and highly appropriate presentation. It's good to see that you have lost none of your humanitarian motivations since you left our good state of Iowa. I would like now to recognize the president of the senior class, Mr. Jeffrey A. Ron, to make what the program says will be the senior class announcement. Jeff?
Thank you, Dr. Parks, ISU faculty and staff, parents, and congratulations, fellow graduates. First of all, I would like to congratulate each of the graduating seniors today. You have the right to feel good about your degree. It is no small accomplishment to receive a degree from a university of the stature of Iowa State. Although at times the road was rough, you have experienced some of the best times of your life. You deserve the right to take pride in your diploma, and it is that pride which, in turn, helps make Iowa State University a better place to learn. It is that pride in Iowa State that helps Dr. Parks, the staff, and the Board of Regents make ISU one of the strongest and best known of all the leading institutions in the nation. As a token of this pride, you, the senior class of 1978, have given the largest class gift ever to Iowa State University. In showing your support, the members of the class of 1978 have contributed over $60,000 for the operation and equipment of a listening room for the ISU library. For many years, there has been a definite need for a centralized collection of recordings of music and historical spoken words. The money will purchase 1,500 recordings and all the equipment and room and furniture for the room, The timing of the gift should coincide with plans for a new addition to the library. This was a very challenging project, and the seniors have a great deal to be proud of. Not only did the senior class organize and facilitate the class gift project, but the senior council was the force behind the commencement breakfasts, seminars, social projects, and call-a-thons for Iowa State University. A lot of people have put a great deal of effort into making the dreams and wishes of all of us come true. I would like to introduce to you the seniors on the council who have carried these programs through. The members of the senior council are in the first row, and would each of you please stand and remain standing as I introduce you, if the audience would hold their applause until the final person has been introduced. The secretary for the senior class is Julie Dushek. Treasurer Cindy Johnson. Publicity Carol Corning. Seminars Co-Chairperson Cindy Coyle, Elections Chairperson Craig Downs, Student Advisor for the class is Mary Beth Howe, the Call-a-thon Chairperson Liz Knittel, Commencement Breakfast Chairperson Sally LePage, and Social Activities Coordinator Randy Riggett. If we could give all of them a round of applause. I would also like to thank everyone else who has done so much for this class, the Alumni Association, Dr. Parks, and all the Iowa State administrators and faculty who have had a hand in helping our class through these years. The most important and very special thank you is to you, my fellow classmates, who have contributed towards this gift, which will help make a great university even greater. What we have done here is far more than raise $60,000 for a class gift. But we have helped make Iowa State University the type of educational institution we are proud of now and proud to be associated with in the years ahead. We have identified with Iowa State with honor and have developed a feeling of loyalty to the class of 1978. Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for your excellent remarks. If you are in suspense as to whether we accept that $60,000 or not, I can relieve it. We do. And more than that, I would like to compliment, I've enjoyed very much working with the senior class officers this year. They're an outstanding group, truly. And I would like to commend them in particular for choosing this special gift to Iowa State University. Not only does the $60,000 exceed any previous class gift, which is important to us, surely, but they have chosen to put their money in what I believe is the university's most prime need for its future, if it is to maintain its image and the fact of excellence. That is the Iowa State Library. I would like now to call on the Executive Director of the Alumni Association, and without making light at all of your topic for serious discussion, Nick, here is a man who truly has a passion for equality when it comes to alumni, because he is interested in obtaining the support of old, middle-aged, and very young alumni. And so I'm giving Don Gustafson this chance to speak to you. Don?
President Parks, thank you, and a special congratulations to the class of 1978. It's been a great experience and a lot of fun for us to work with this class, and I have to make an admission up here. Being Director of Alumni Affairs at an institution like this is probably the best job in the world, and it's mainly because of people like you that are graduating here today. You're graduating in a class of some 2,200 today to join a class of more than 95,000. This class, the alumni class, too, has distinguished itself. These magnificent facilities that you have here in the Iowa State Center are primarily because of the concern and deep appreciation of many thousands of Iowa Staters that have gone before you. Just quickly, because I know you have things to do. The association at Iowa State, the Alumni Association, just in a nutshell, has one primary concern. We're here to make a good university better, to make a great university greater. We look forward to working with the class of 78 in the years ahead, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome you as the newest members of our Alumni Association. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Don. You can see by your program that this morning's ceremony is fast winding down. I do want to introduce some people and make some announcements in conclusion. First, I would like to introduce a couple of people on the platform who have had, as we might say, no speaking parts. They are important to us, however. I'd like to introduce first Mrs. Constance Bellin. Connie, would you stand? Mrs. Bellin is a member of our Board of Regents from Des Moines. Also, Also, I believe that Dr. Thomas Thielen is with us. Is Tom here? Yeah, he is our Vice President for Student Affairs, and it's good of you to come to this, Tom. And I have a group introduction to make, as you'll note on your program. In conformance with our printed program, at this time I would like for us to pay tribute to a special group within the graduating class, namely those who are graduating with distinction. And I would like to ask all of those of you who are graduating with distinction to please stand at this moment so that you can be more appropriately recognized. Yours is an outstanding accomplishment of academic achievement, and I do congratulate you. And to all of you members of the entire graduating class, whether you are graduating with high distinction, somewhat less, average, or just barely, I congratulate you all. Like Mr. Ron, your senior class president, I am always claiming that this is a fine school, and I must be consistent in this because Mrs. Bellin is watching me here. And it is a fine school, and anyone who graduates here, I think, should be proud of that fact. And I wish for each one of you who is graduating today the very best of good fortune always. I have just a couple of short announcements. I would like to remind you that the Fisher Theater, this Hilton Coliseum, and the Sheeman Continuing Education Building with the Bernier Art Gallery will all be open after the commencement ceremonies for anyone wishing to visit them. I would also like to request that the audience remain standing while the faculty leaves the auditorium. And now, with a benediction by the Reverend Donald M. Gruber, I pronounce the 1978 spring quarter at a close.
Shall we stand?